We'll stay with these very disturbing stories and speak to Bianca van Aswegen, Criminologist and National Coordinator for Missing Children South Africa. A very good evening to you, Bianca, and thank you so much for your time. It really boggles the mind, and it's quite difficult to even process some of what we've just heard. And one would then ask a question, why hurt a child?
Good evening. Yes, this is very disheartening, and especially when it comes to the perpetrators being those people that are actually supposed to safeguard our children, especially parents. There's so many factors that come into play when it comes to hurting a child, whether it's psychological, is it drug-induced, what is the motive behind it? But I don't think we'll ever be able to understand why parents would actually do this to their own children.
And when you look at the brutality of it all, right, child abuse is brutal. And as you say, if it's done by somebody that the child would have expected, to protect them, a parent or someone even close to them, this causes all kinds of, physical and emotional trauma. But let's talk about another aspect which is critical to a child's upbringing, which is the element of trust.
Definitely. So when we look at these types of perpetrators, we do see cases where these perpetrators are actually known to the children. As we were talking, just it's parents, people in our communities, it's family members, it's family friends. And those are the ones that these children are supposed to be able to trust. And do we actually trust, as the whole of South Africa, do we trust each other these days if children even can't trust their own parents, family members, people in our communities that are supposed to safeguard them? So now it also leaves us with the questions, those children are also going to school. Do they trust the people at school? Can we trust them as parents to take them to school? There's so many questions being raised when it comes to the topic of trust with our children.
And when you look at that, especially in the case of Nikita, the 4-year-old, right, one also really listens to some of what is being told, even by some of the neighbors as to what allegedly happened to her. They would have heard what was taking place inside, and some of them recording her screams, and which then begs the question, which some people are asking, why not break down the door and actually help that little girl? And I wonder, is it as simple as that?
Well, the community, the whole of South Africa actually has the responsibility to report matters like this. If you hear something, if you see something, please report it. You don't even have to give your name. There are platforms to report this to the police anonymously. But that is why we rely on the public to actually intervene with stuff like this. If we don't hear about it, we cannot intervene, and SABC cannot investigate. And this is actually putting our children in a more vulnerable position at the moment of people looking away. They absolutely desensitized to hearing things like this. If a child is screaming, they don't want to get involved. They turn their back, they're not reporting these matters, and our children are suffering because of this.
Yeah.
So we really urge the community, the public, to please man up, report these matters. If you hear something, see something, report it, make a difference, and save a child's life.
Bianca, is it only a case of being desensitized, or is there something more at play here? Because as you say, if someone can call and report anonymously and simply not give their names, then why the reluctance in some of the cases?
I think people are quite reluctant to report this because they don't want to get involved. They don't want to be implemented in something, a matter that's happened next to them, for instance, being a neighbor. If they know the neighbors might be violent, might it actually cause their harm? They've also got maybe children. Might the neighbor actually cause harm to them? So I think it's a lot of times the fact that people step back, they don't report these because they don't want to get involved. They don't want to be implicated in a matter like that. And they're also scared for their own safety. But we really need to, as I said, we can report this anonymously, and we do rely on the public to report these things so we can intervene and assist.
So when it comes then to, let's say, for example, the abuse is not as overt as we've seen in some cases where you're hearing screams, you're seeing some of the signs. How then do we know if a child is being abused? What should we look out for in order to make sure that at least we then try to get involved? Because some of the cases aren't as obvious.
No, they aren't as obvious where you can actually hear the abuse happening. But you might be seeing marks on a child, for instance. They might have bruises on them. They might be malnourished. But this is also where the responsibility of our schools come into play. We've got social workers at our schools that can pick up on these subtle signs of a child being abused. Are they withdrawn? Do they see a change in personality in their daily life? Is there, there's a lot of signs within a child to see that something is wrong. They might act out in school, or they might completely withdraw. Friends, even the child's friends might pick something up. So if a child comes to you and they tell you that they do feel that one of their friends are being harmed in some way, or that they do feel worried about them, please speak up. Even if you go and speak to the social worker at school or to your nearest police station, please report this.
So how then, especially in cases, right, where you find that a child has been so socialized in such a way that this alleged perpetrator will then be saying some dark things to them, making them feel like this is all their fault and they should not even be telling anyone, because if they do, they'll either be shamed or people will get to know this little secret. So how then do you begin to navigate those waters if you're getting involved to try and get this child to also understand that what is happening to them is not normal and it should not be happening and it's not their fault?
Definitely. So we see this quite often happening when it comes to grooming. So the perpetrator will actually gain the trust of the child. They'll also tell them to not speak out or threaten them by harming their family, for instance. And the child might just obey whatever the perpetrator is telling them. So this is where we also come into protective behaviors with our children that we implement in schools to make sure that the child knows there are safe environments that they can go to, where they can go and speak to someone to actually assist them. I know it's not always as easy as it's said, because a lot of schools don't have that programs implemented. Some people don't, some of these children aren't even going to school. But we need to kind of implement that in our communities, within our churches, within our safe havens, in our...
All right, that line letting us down there, but you did get a sense of just, the seriousness of this matter, and also just what you can do in your community if you find that there is a child who is, you suspect is being abused, or you're seeing such incidents. It is not time to turn away, but certainly time to get involved. That was Bianca van Aswegen, Criminologist and National Coordinator for Missing Children South Africa.